What I wanted to address today is that I think more than anything else that when we look at what we're going through in the Virgin Islands, it's a very interesting time. And you have to look at it in the context that 2008 onward has really made some significant changes that we're experiencing. And for a lot of you that are business owners or employees of businesses, I clearly understand those challenges that you're going through, that those challenges are challenges that are for the moment, and they're very different than the challenges that we have had historically within the past. And that what we experienced yesterday and what we've gone through with the closing of Hovensa and everything else is nothing more than one element of how we have to address the situation that we're dealt with in many cases. Yesterday's vote and the vote of the Senate clearly is one that I'm disappointed about. One that they, as the body that can give advice and consent, made a certain determination that I do not agree with, but they've made that determination. But I look at that as just one piece of many pieces of things that we have to do to make sure that our community is able to achieve a significant growth going forward. Whether it be from the Main Street enhancement that we're doing and will commence very shortly, where we're investing over $8 million downtown with making sure that Main Street is redone. With the Fort Christian revitalization project, where we finally have the funding to be able to address that project and open that up, particularly as we go into 2017. With the parking lot project that we're doing with respect to the garage. With our port projects. We have over $75 million in port projects that will be taking place, whether it be from the dredging that's in the West Indian Company area to the dredging in Crown Bay, or the construction of a new pier that we need in order to be competitive with St. Martin and some of the other islands. All those are part of projects that we're doing to be able to address. And when I look at the vote that just took place, that is but one item of many things that we have to address long-term going forward. One of the things that I'm most concerned about, and we found this out as we looked at our numbers, we looked at the economics, is that Hovensa and the oil refinery was more important with respect to our gross territorial product than even tourism. And if you consider the importance of tourism within our community, then you understand the context of why that refinery of 1,800 acres is so important to this community, not just to the island of St. Croix, but to the Virgin Islands overall. And when I dealt with this for the last 14 months, believe me, very little sleep. I look at the fact that today we have over 32,000 of our people that are on welfare and SNAP programs. That equals to $57 million a year. That's $4 million more than last year. When you look at and see in residential housing, low-income housing, Virgin Islands Housing Authority, that the amount of income in rental income has gone down in the last year is an indication that those individuals in our community that are low income are making less money because your rent in public housing is determined by the level of income. So we have more individuals on SNAP programs. We have rental income that is reducing, which is clearly an indication that we have to look at items that can grow and steer our economy. And that is where, to me, the facility becomes extremely important. When we lost that facility, we lost $580 million in direct economic benefit to our community, territory-wide. Bankruptcies in the District of St. Thomas and St. John are higher than bankruptcies in St. Croix, which gives you an indication of the importance that's taking place there. We lost over $100 million in tax revenues directly at the lowest point when it was down to 350,000 barrels a year versus highest point many years before. 12% of income in the private sector was wiped out completely by the loss of that refinery. So our initiative, more than anything else, was to look for a pathway that would result in a sale. Many of the senators disagreed with that. They disagreed with what we did, and you hear many things. Some talked about the fact that we gave up $7 million in property taxes. But we didn't give up $7 million in property taxes. We deferred $7 million for a one-year period of time. Many spoke about the health benefits and the problems that we have. Well, we're prosecuting. We're in legal cases right now with respect to a lot of those health cases, and those we're not going to stop in either case, because that was not part of our agreement. What this agreement did more than anything else, it allowed us to set a timetable for the sale of the facility in a manner that was concerted, a manner that was organized, and more than everything, did it when we wanted it to be done, which was sooner rather than later. Some expressed concerns about the fact, well, this is rough times. We've had rough times in the Virgin Islands before, and Virgin Islanders can go to other places. That's not the message I want to send. Right now, we're making investments in broadband of over $100 million to be able to have capital to attract businesses, which means I want to attract more young people. I want to attract more business opportunities to the territory. We're making the changes with WAPA to be able to lower costs by at least a third with respect to utilities. Having the refinery allowed us to hook in one of the largest employers, largest manufacturers, so we could reduce the costs even further. Those were all the advantages that we were looking for with respect to the refinery and looking for a pathway towards that agreement. We gave them nothing in the agreement whatsoever. Items talked about such as the health, such as the deferment, such as, are you sure that we're getting the best deal? We understood that it was a breach of a contract. But to my way of thinking, I would rather spend money dealing with our social issues as opposed to litigation. I would rather not have to litigate if I can compromise towards some sort of a solution that works in the best interest. Now that the senators have made a decision, which I respect, because that's their job as a legislative branch. I submit the legislation, I submit the best pathway, I think. They either accept it or they don't, and they have not. What we will do now is communicate to Hovensa that you now have to honor all the terms of the concession agreement. From the bidding, to the custom duties, to making sure that you're operating and you're doing exactly what is necessary per that agreement. Hovensa and the owners of Hovensa will in turn make their determination as to what the best course of action is. And we will then decide how best to work our way through that. I'm hopeful that at some point, once we get to the end of this, that we're able to put that 1,800 acres to some sort of use. Because it sits in the middle of the industrial part of where we are. We now have increased applications for the research and technology part. Ever since we filed the cases on the tax court with respect to the economic development, we've seen a tremendous increase on applications coming into the Economic Development Commission, clearly showing that there's confidence in the Virgin Islands and where we're going. We still have a Medicaid issue with the expansion. We need $21 million more to be able to fulfill our Medicaid expansion requirements under healthcare reform. We have an unfunded pension liability of $1.8 billion, which means we're underfunding every year equal to $70 million in terms of what we should be funding going into the pension system. This year's budget has a $20 million adjustment that the legislature has to fund. And even after we address that, looking at fiscal year 15, which starts October 1 of 2014, we still have a $23 million budget shortfall just as that begins, because a portion of this year's budget is based on refunding of bonds, which we can't do in the next fiscal year. So these are all the jugglings that have to take place to make sure that we employ the police officers that respond, the nurses in our schools and in our hospitals, the educational system that will continue to attract teachers, and still at the same time trying to fill a $100 million hole that we experienced with the closing and the shutdown of the business activity of Hovensa. The Senate was not very clear what they did last night. What they said is, at the end of the discussion, is they passed a resolution to do exactly what I wanted them to do, which is to sell the refinery. But their resolution gave no indication as to time frame or the involvement of the government. What I wanted to do was make sure that they sold it within 14 months, that we were involved in the process each and every way along the way to make sure that they understood exactly what we wanted and we were able to communicate that. And when you look at that in the context of the refinery, the broadband expansion, Main Street expansion, boardwalk expansion on St. Croix, we have to look at it and fit it all together, because that's what we're really looking at. Not just a vote last night, but making sure that all those pieces fit together so that the 106,000 people that live in the Virgin Islands, the 15,500 K through 12 to go to school, the 8,500 between K and third grade, that we are trying to make sure to have universal child care education, that we're able to fund that for them. And today, Commissioner Finch is outlining exactly where we're going with child care, that we want to make sure that that next generation is able to have progression, have opportunities, and that we begin at the pre-K level. So that decisions such as Hovensa, what takes place, they understand it is in the context, not just of the Virgin Islands, but overall. There have been a number of refineries that have closed within the United States over the last 12 months. 2 of them are back open, 1 is still closed. We have an opportunity to open this one. Hopefully, someone will make a decision, even with the irrespective of the decision that was made, that they'll be willing to go through the pathway of making and getting towards some sort of a resolution, whether it be with the executive or the legislative. But the most important message I want to send is that The Hovensa agreement, the Hovensa action is just one part of many things that we have to juggle each day to make sure that we keep things on a pathway that progresses each and every year, irrespective of the financial challenges that we have. And I couldn't think of a better group to be able to communicate that to than those that work at companies throughout our community, the owners of businesses, and individuals who are engaged in our community, not just in a business fashion, but also in the organizations that you give your time to throughout our community, because you understand more than anything the philanthropy that takes place, the community organizations that are in need, and the individuals that just require our attention. Thank you very much.